Hello there everyone, welcome back to another video about the One Piece card game. Thank you to all my Patreon members who will be seeing this first, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please do check out my Patreon linked in the description. I upload in-depth guides to various decks in the format analyses, and all sorts of other good stuff over on my Patreon much earlier than you will see it on YouTube. So if you're interested in seeing OP03 content, you should check out my Patreon now because it should be up there by the time you're seeing this. And if you want to get a head start on the format, I would highly recommend it. I think it's a very reasonably priced for what you're getting, so please do take a look. That being said, today I'm going to be giving you my in-depth guide to Trafalgar lore, one of, if not the best leaders in the game, one of the leaders with the most longevity, I think, out of any leader that we have seen released thus far. I think Trafalgar lore is going to be viable probably for years, and it's definitely not a bad idea to invest some time in getting good at the leader now, so in the future you can come back to it and get much better with the leader very quickly because you already have that wealth of experience. So lore. Why lore? Well, firstly, you're a weeb. I don't think there is a single lore player who is not a weeb. Every lore player says shambles, right? Like every lore player has watched the anime or read the manga. I've never met a lore player who hasn't. If you exist, something's wrong with you, boss. But yeah, lean into it, all right? Accept it. It is what it is. Your wins are your wins with lore, right? Like lore, unlike a lot of other decks in the format, you don't really cheese out your unless you open, the most god tier insane nuts, and even then it's very possible to mess that up if you're a bad player. Your wins are usually due to you literally structuring your turns properly, knowing how to search, keeping track of your searches, knowing how to attack, knowing when to be defensive, knowing when to, tread that sort of line. There's a huge amount that goes into playing lore well, and as a result, those wins that you get, they're very, very, very likely to be your wins. Like a worse player would not have gotten that win. Sort of on this same vein, the deck has a very high skill ceiling, which means that it's one of those decks where once you make top cut with it, failing a catastrophic, deck failure, which can absolutely happen, it's by no means a guarantee, you are well placed to do very well in top cut. Of course, the trade-off you're making there is you need to play perfectly all day. And with a deck with a very high ceiling and indeed a very high skill floor, which I probably should have put there, but I guess it's more of a weakness, that's something that is going to be quite difficult. You're going to go home from your day one of regionals and you're going to have a throbbing headache because you have had to think about 20 times more than basically every other deck in the room. And this is not me, complimenting lore players for no reason. Of course, myself being a lore player, you might see it that way, but I genuinely just think lore is a very, very challenging deck to play. OP01 Kid felt the same. You had to think a lot about those mirror matches. There was a lot that went into it. And then you would compare it to something like Kaido, which required basically no thought whatsoever. It's really powerful. The power level ceiling of lore is incredibly high. If you see everything that you need to see, it's very difficult to lose. Obviously, again, if you're playing perfectly, if you see everything you need to see, God, your opponent has to really see absolute bullshit for that to somehow go in their favor. You can win all matchups. There isn't any matchup that's disastrously bad. In OP01, lore really struggled into Kaido. You could just kill you outright. That isn't really an issue in OP02, and you can basically beat everything. And of course, the most compelling reason to play lore is the actual core package is relatively tight, and there's a lot of flexibility. So you are able to really tailor your deck list for the meta. Now, of course, the downside of that is if you do not tailor your list appropriately for the meta, you're going to be having a horrible time. But that's sort of the trade-off, right? So what are the strengths? As I said, very, very versatile. You can tech lore to handle anything. There's not really a deck in the game that lore can't, after a bit of testing. Like as a player, you can figure out what you need for that matchup, you can put it in, and it just completely swings the matchup. As I said as well, the power level of the deck is very, very high. It is not a lack of power that holds back lore from doing well whenever it is being held back. Again, very high skill ceiling, so you're rewarded for your high level play. You can beat everything. As I said, again, everything is beatable. When it goes off, it goes off. Some of the most insane toxic gameplay you will ever see can come from lore players who just see everything. We're talking like crazy restand plays, insane blocker lore plays, plussing out the arse every single turn, having like these 15 card hands while other decks have like 4 card hands, and then just bashing face for crazy numbers. And your skill is directly rewarded. As I said, most of the time, you know, if you play well, you should be winning. Now, again, we'll come on to the weaknesses now because, you know, it can brick really, really hard. This happened to me in my top 16 game. Unlike other decks, because you're kind of playing a combo deck, like that's kind of, you want to be popping off in the early game, you play a lot of cards that can be dead in the early game. You play a lot of cards that are really, really good later on in the game when you're able to search them, that are really, really good for specific matchups, and if you see too many of them, it's really bad. So, for example, in my top 16 game against Kinemon, I opened, it was 3 Otamas, a Makino, and a Radbeam after Mulligan. And there's not really much you can do with that. And those kind of hands happen more often than you think. You can whiff your searches, so even a hand that looks good might end up being horrible. Because the fundamental thing about the deck is until you've looped through your entire deck once, it is all variance. There have been games where I will top check with Nami and I see 4 lores and I'm like, okay, well, those are going to the bottom of the deck. Or I'll search with a Bonnie and I'll only see Straw Hats. Until you have literally searched through your entire deck one time, which is about 7 searches, and you've been keeping track of it. Until you do that, it is pure variance and you can get screwed. And you can run the maths, but sometimes it does not matter how much maths you do, you will just take it now. You need to see your searches. This deck cannot function without those searches. If you're only seeing top end, you suck. Like, your leader is vanilla, your top end is nowhere near good enough in isolation, and you will just get clapped by literally every deck in the format. You can get blown out by Rush. You don't actually have that much counter power in the early game, or even in general. Like once you hit the late game, like, yes, your rad beams can start popping off and it's really nice, but like, or at least the mid game, but like in the early game, you can just get the shit rushed out of you, and there's not much really you can do. You'll go down to 1 to 0 life, and you'll just be like hanging on by a thread. One misplay will lose you the game, almost always. The downside of having a deck with such a high skill floor is you need to play perfectly all day, and that's not going to be an issue for the first half of the day, or even up to round 5 or 6, but those last few rounds, you're going to be hanging, and you're going to be fighting for your life to not misplay. It is a competition against yourself, basically, to not make a mistake, because those mistakes will cost you. It can be really, really difficult to know how to build for the meta. This is just one of those things where metas change depending on the country you're in, depending on the region. Metas change depending on the week. Sometimes a lot of people, like, you got to predict how people are going to predict the meta, right? So it's not just about predicting the meta. It's about predicting what other people are going to think the meta is and what they're going to bring to counter that. And now you've got to counter that because you've got to be kind of thinking a couple steps ahead, because Lore is a deck where you really need to tech for the format. And the mirror just sucks ass. It's awful. Take it from someone who played it 4 times in their most recent event. It really, really sucks. You can outplay your opponent as much as possible, but sometimes it does not matter. Okay, so those are the strengths and the weaknesses. What are the key cards? For me, I think the key cards are the 3 Searchers, the 2 Lores, and Vista. So the 3 Searchers are really important for different reasons. Dadan finds you Nami, it finds you Chopper, it finds you Makino, and it finds you Otama. Incredibly important cards. Dadan finding a Nami and Nami finding a Chopper means that one card just got you basically a full board. Nami finds Chopper, it finds your Zoros, and it also finds, in the later part of the game, your Radical Beams. So Nami is good at all stages of the game finding those pieces. And Bonnie is broken when you can control how you're using it. When you're able to play a Bonnie, top search, find a blocker lore, and then return that Bonnie to your hand to keep this plussing going, and then every single turn adding either a restand or a blocker lore, your deck is doing some disgusting stuff. And as long as you're able to just keep recycling that Bonnie, it is crazy. The blocker lore needs no explanation. I think it's the heart and soul of the deck. If you're trying to play lore without blocker lore, don't bother. And of course, restand lore. We were sleeping on this card so hard in OP01. This should have been a 4-off from day 1. The kind of lethals this lets you do is unreal. You can really do some toxic bullshit with this card. And of course, Vista is essential at the moment into what is meta. And you cannot win the mirror without Vista consistently. I'll say that. Like, obviously, the thing is you can always high roll, but like if you want to, on a consistent basis, be winning more often than a equally skilled opponent with a similar list, you need Vista. So those are the key cards. So, onto the deck list, and this is another one of those situations where lore is insanely versatile. So, what I've done here is I've got these core cards, right? These I just don't think you can play lore without. you need your 16 1-drop reds, you need your 4 Danans, you need your 4 Bonnies, and you need your 8 Laws, right? I do not think it is possible, really, to play this deck without these cards. So everything you do is kind of based off of this core of 32 cards, I believe this is. So your remaining 18 cards in your deck are to sort of complement this, to tack for the format, to figure out what you need to be playing, to sort of go from there. But these are essential. I don't think these are leaving for a while. Okay, so I've got 3 different deck lists here. The first of this is Standard Lore. Now, shoutouts to Cross. I've ripped Cross's Standard Lore build here. And I call this Standard Lore because it's just kind of what you would expect, right? You're playing Beige, you're playing Brook, you're playing your Zoros, you're playing Radbeam, you're playing Jet Pistol, you're playing Vista. You kind of got all of the sort of standard stuff, right? No crazy, weird build that you wouldn't necessarily expect. This is everything that, if you've played the format, if you've played the game at all, this is what you would expect Lore to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, it does mean everyone knows what's coming. And so the disadvantage of a standard deck like this is everyone kind of knows what to expect. But again, it's very, very good, of course. Like, I'm pretty sure Cross won Peoria with this exact list. If not, it wasn't this exact, it was very similar. So this is a really good one to just start out with, especially if you're trying to learn Lore before you try and go off-piste. Start off with something like this, and I think you'll be good to go. So then there's Dogra Lore. This is Nikki Goldman's build, and shout out to Nikki. So this is based off of abusing Dogra. And you can see this is actually not playing the top search army. This is actually playing the Don moving around army. This is a far more aggressive build. And this is much more designed for the current meta we see. You can see this is playing the 5-cost Luffy. It's playing less Restand Lore. This is playing 4 Rush Zoro, no ST Zoro. Very, very, very aggressive build that is much better into the red format that we are currently seeing. So this is, again, more designed for the current format. And of course, you can see it kind of immediately breaks that sort of rule, quote unquote, I said about, the top search army is basically never going to leave. But there is a very good reason for this. And I believe Nikki got 3rd at his regional. So again, a very, very good list. And then here's my build that I tried. This is based off a Japanese player. This is an event lore. Now my build is teched for the current format. I wasn't able to just net deck because it didn't work in OP02. It didn't work with the meta we were seeing. So I made changes and I basically arrived at this. And you can see that this is playing a ton of events. I really want to fit in the 4th Punk Gibson, but it's very, very difficult. This gives you a lot of extra defense in the late game. And the goal is to kind of rush that leader effect and then be more aggressive with your units. But have like that backup of knowing like, okay, I've got a ton of really, really powerful events here to back me up. Your Rad Beams are putting in heavy work, and a lot of people are not going to expect the Punk Gibson. And again, sometimes you're just going to trigger a Punk Gibson and it's like over. Like that trigger can win you the game. So I really do like this build. I don't know if it's probably not the best lore build, but I'm very comfortable with it. It's one I've really enjoyed playing. It feels really, really good to me. I don't know. Beige feels kind of awkward to me, but yeah, really, really good build as well. All 3 of these I think are really, really good. I got top 16 with this, and then I, bricked horribly in top 16, but I think I could have gone all the way. I don't think it was a problem with the list necessarily. I think it was just really, really bad luck on the day. But yeah, I think all 3 of these lists are really, really good. Depending on the meta you're going into is going to be the one is going to sort of dictate which one of these you want to go for. But certainly I would recommend starting on Cross's build and then give mine a try and give Nikki's a try and see how you like them. Okay, so now that these builds are sort of out there, let's talk about the matchups. That's kind of what you're all here for. So, Kinemon. I think this is an advantageous matchup, generally speaking. You want to go second. And honestly, my win rate against Kinemon is like really, really, really high with my list, even going first. And that's because you can kind of recover from even a very powerful opening few turns of Kinemon. So it's a real uphill battle depending on their opening hand, right? If they see everything, if they go second, if they turn 1 Okiku, turn 2 Yamato, turn 4 Odin, and turn 5 Odin or something, that's really, really difficult to manage, but it can be managed. It's possible to win despite that. You want to rush out of board as fast as possible and really start cooking with your leader. You need to see a good opening hand into Kinemon. And obviously, your opening hand can be less good than theirs, but it needs to be decent. It can't be bad. If you open a bad opening hand into Kinemon, it doesn't really matter how bad the Kinemon's opening hand is. Like, a bad Kinemon hand is a hell of a lot better than a bad lore hand. And yeah, you want to be cooking with your leader effect and blocker law as fast as possible. Control their board and pressure life every single turn. You need to be chipping them down, getting them into that 1 to 2 range, so when you start really aggroing them, they're just going to capitulate. Green has less defense than you think, so like I have won games where they're on 2 life through literally 7-9-9. That was enough. That was enough. Even though they had like a 4-card hand, that was sufficient. It was the only way I was going to be able to win the game. I had to, like, you know, it was janked, but like sometimes that's enough. Yeah, deal with Okiku as a priority. Save your jet pistols for Okiku. Don't use them on a Yamato or something. Like, Okiku has to go. When you deal with the first Okiku, the odds of them having another one are less significant. And usually if you deal with that first one, they might get another one 2 turns later, but at that point you're able to sort of recover your board and start plussing, and it's okay. The turn they play Odin is usually very, very telegraphed. You can kind of know it's coming. So that means that turn, they're not really going to do much damage. So it's easy to protect. You can be very, very aggressive on the turn before you suspect that Odin's coming. Like, if you see them search an Odin, they've got 1 unit on the board, and they're going to 7-Don next turn, they're going to play the Odin. So on that next turn, on your turn, just turn everything sideways. Do as much damage as possible, really be aggressive, because you know that they're only really going to get 1 attack in. So, yeah, overall, I think Kinemon, very, very winnable, very, very beatable. You just need to not break. If you open a busted law hand, I don't really know how Kinemon wins unless they open a totally broken hand. And if you open a good law hand, you should be winning most of the time. Zoro, this is really, really rough. So the mulligan targets, you can see they're sort of standard. You're mulliganing for your pluses and your laws, but you really want to see Vista as well. If you can be looping Vista with blocker law, you're in a really good situation. Pressure, pressure, pressure. You want to go first because you need to be rushing your leader effect, and you need to be doing damage proactively, and you need to be dealing with Zoro's board as proactively as possible. Looping Vista is really, really good in this matchup. Be careful. Don't just slam it down without thinking unless you've got another one, because if they Vista your Vista, you are screwed. And yeah, but being able to loop Vista, dealing with all their 1 costs, just building like a board to just contest theirs. If you can stay at 1 to 2 life and deal with their board, you are in such a good position. You should be winning, because you can kill Zoro in about 2 turns pretty easily. 2 9-beards will give you trouble, but 1 isn't really an issue thanks to restand law. So even if they 9-beard on like 1 life, if you've got a full board, that might not be enough, because you can swing 14-14, right, with any of your 6Ks up. So that's the thing. I think Zoro, it's a really, really difficult matchup sometimes, because they can just blow you out. And make sure that you're just keeping in mind, like, that they can swing unblockables, right? They can swing with 5WF, they can Diablo Jambe. So as long as you're bearing that in mind, and you're basically always considering what they might be doing on their turn, you should be fine. The mirror, this sucks. It literally doesn't matter. Like, going first can be better depending on your opening hand. Going second can be better depending on your opening hand. It literally doesn't matter. It sucks. It's whoever sees more good cards. Nothing helps if your opponent sees more searches and more top end, but if you see more searches and more top end, nothing can really help your opponent. The only thing that can really change the mirror is if one of you is playing Vista and the other one isn't. Now again, you have to draw your Vista, you have to see the Vista, so you might not even see it, but that is going to have a significant effect, like on the aggregate of your mirror match games. Basically, you just kind of have to open better than they do, play perfectly, and hope you see your good cards. I won 3 out of 4 of my law mirrors. And the 1 mirror I lost, I opened less good than my opponent, and the 3 mirrors I won, I opened better than my opponent. On top of both of us having to play perfectly the entire time as well. So that's the thing. So if you're that's the one thing I'd say about law. If you are looking at a meta where there's going to be a lot of law players, playing law sucks, because you're going to be getting mirrors, and it can really feel like just dumb luck. Okay, next, Whitebeard. Usual mulligans. Boatbeard is literally free, honestly. Like, you can literally just focus on their board. You don't even need to worry about dealing damage. You can be really greedy when it comes to like removing their board, because that's the #1 priority. And just build up your board, abuse your pluses, build up a fat hand, and then the second they're on 0 life, like, you just go 14-14 with your restand laws, and you do that 2 turns in a row, and they're dead. There's literally no way for them to live. If it's Strawbeard, you want to be clearing the board and pressuring them with 6Ks. Strawbeard is a much more difficult matchup, but it's still very, very winnable. Strawbeard literally needs to see, like, absolutely toxic nuts, right? Like, instantly be having the outs to your blocker laws, not letting you build a board, having double 9-beard. Like, these are the sorts of things that, like, on 2 life. These are the sorts of things that, like, 9-beard needs to do for, Strawbeard needs to do for it to, like, be really, really oppressive. On the whole, though, you should be winning this matchup for sure. Yeah, just cook. And you want to be going second, always. Eva, This is pretty damn free. You want to be going second here, because basically Eva does like nothing besides leader swings for the first 4 turns of the game, and it's much better for those leader swings to be 5k than 6k, because that's what they'll be. Turn 1, Eva's going to play a Perona. Turn 2, they're going to play Blockadoffy. Turn 3, they're going to play 7k Croc. Turn 4, they're going to play Ivankov and play out a Luffy. So they're doing nothing until that point. 6 cost Luffy, which they're playing out with the Ivankov, does nothing against your deck because it bounces 4 costs, and all your stuff is 5 costs or like 1 or 2 costs. So it literally does nothing. Save an Otama pistol to deal with it immediately so you're not pressured by the double attack, but otherwise you just rush your leader effect, pressure them, just focus face. Their board is really usually not very scary. Might be worth dealing with, like, if you can Otama a 7 cost Croc and then just swing into it for free to rip out loads of cards from their hand, that can be worth it. But yeah, otherwise, this is a really free matchup. You should be winning this. Kaido, I think this is slightly advantageous in OP02. You want to be going first, and whilst this used to be your worst matchup, you have so much aggression in OP02 and so much more ability to just build a board really fast, so many great pluses, that it's kind of swung in the opposite way now. So you want to be using your pluses in the early game, and then getting them back in your hand. That's the biggest thing. You want to play them out, and then return them to your hand through your leader effect, and sort of try and preserve a good mix of top and low end in your hand for the 10 cost Kaido turn. Because then you want to instantly rebuild your board, law effect again. Like, don't play more than 1 blocker law, right? Don't play more than 1 restand law. Just start searching them, right? Just start saving them up. Obviously, if your opponent clearly doesn't have a 10 cost Kaido, then yeah, cook him. But that's the thing. You want to play a little bit conservative, while also applying as much pressure as possible. So when they do 10 cost Kaido you, if you put them down to 1 or 2 life, you just build a board out immediately, and then go, yep, okay, nice job. And they're not going to be able to 10 cost Kaido you for 2 more turns, and they're going to have barely any Don, which means you can just cook them up real easy. Rush leader effect and deal as much damage as fast as possible. That's like the TLDR, and that's why you want to go first, so you can be like have the sort of initiative on that. Smoker. I think this is pretty easy. You want to be going second because Smoker wants to go second. And yes, Smoker's going to be swinging 7k for pretty much the entire game. So just take the 7k swings for the first few turns. It is what it is. But they need to hard draw every single one of their good cards. So you can pressure with your really strong aggression, right? Like with your restand laws, with your Rush Zoros, with your 7k, with your starter deck Zoros. And you can just outvalue them, basically. Rush your leader effect. You're going to be putting up like the most ridiculous boards that's so difficult for them to deal with. Even on the turn they 10 cost Kuzan, like they're only going to kill 1 thing. So until basically turn 6, Smoker's removal is going to be limited to pretty much 1 card a turn. Play around Shockwave, abuse your pluses as much as possible, and always play with 1 extra Don, like when you're going for like kill turns and stuff, because a trigger might just screw you over. And you don't want to be in a situation where that trigger literally loses you the game. So always play with that in mind. But yeah, Smoker should be pretty free. They really need to see the absolute nuts, and you need to break for them for this to be a tough matchup. And finally, Zephyr. This one's actually kind of spooky. So you want to be going second. If you go first, it can be really, really scary. And if Zephyr sees ramp, and even if they go first, it can be really, really scary. If Zephyr sees good curve, this is just tough. This is just scary. Like, you need to rush them down as fast as possible with 7k swings because they have 2k counters at the arse. But once 10 cost Kuzan hits the board, you are on a clock. They're killing 2 things on turn 5 on their 10 cost Kuzan turn, so goodbye to your blocker law if you played 2 of them, goodbye to both. Goodbye to restand or whatever. And then every single turn, when they swing, they're killing your blocker law. They're killing whatever. They've got a blanket minus to board, so they're just going to be able to literally remove your whole board. And basically your top end's going to be gone. They're just going to nuke your top end, and you're going to be left with like a Dan and a Dream. And it can be really, really spooky, so you need to be very aggressive. Obviously, most of the time, you should be winning because Zephyr needs to hard draw its good cards, and you know it has no consistency, so it just needs to do it. But if it sees its good cards, oh my god, this matchup can be really, really spooky. But there we go. So that is it for my in-depth guide to Trafalgar lore in the OP02 format. I really hope you guys found this video useful. Patrons, OP03 content will be starting from my next Patreon video. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it's already on. It's already up there. So please do check out my Patreon linked in the description. I really do appreciate all the support I get on my Patreon over there. It really does help fund the channel and let me make content like this. So yeah, thank you so much for all your support. Subscribe to the channel for more One Piece trading card game content, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.